Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. And I just got some questions and I think some opinions in the comment sections of some of the videos where I was doing brakes on some German vehicles. And I'm gonna make this video because it's not really it would take me a little bit to explain this in a message in the comments to respond to these guys. So what I'm trying to explain to you is why I always change when we do a brake job, we always change the rotors with the brake pads on these German vehicles like BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Porsches. Not as much as the Volkswagens, I believe. Yeah, they're a little bit kind of easier on those things. But what specifically on the Mercedes and BMWs, and again Audis, Porsches, the way their brake systems work, and this is different from Japanese and American vehicles. The way that those brake systems work is the rotors are actually made of a softer material, and the reason probably why they made it is because they wanted to make sure that these cars actually stop faster, and they do stop faster because of that, because the brake pad and the rotor work with each other, and they work in tandem, or whatever, it's in synchronized technique. And that's why the German vehicles stop actually much faster than the other ones, because they have a better grip when you have a softer material on the rotor and in a brake pad, and they're just engineered that way, in that way. And as you can see, actually I'll give you an example here. This is a BMW, I know, but it's the same for Mercedes, all these other vehicle brands. This is almost a brand new brake pads, actually, and these feel to be, so they trying to show you that's the thickness of the brake pad. So it's that first left big layer. So these brake pads were recently changed, and obviously they actually replaced the rotors because they don't have an edge. The first thing that you see on German rotors is once when they start to wearing off, when they start wearing off, you will get this edge right here because the material's wearing off. So even with this, these brand new brake pads and rotors, I mean, look at the grooves that you will see here. So these rotors are pretty much, they're actually this is actually considered a bad shape. The reason why this happens is most of the time, again, because of this, the material of the rotor, it allows it, it kind of allows it to do that. And most of the time this happens because of dirt in the brake pads, or just the way that the metal particles are in the brake pads. The two of these combined, they will create these ridges. So at some point, if the brake pads wear faster than the rotors, and you decide to install new rotor or new brake pads without buying the rotors, what's going to happen is you're going to have a worn out rotor. So the material actually, there are many physical capabilities on these metals, and one of them is actually called a wear resistance. It's a physical ability, and when this brake pad wears off, and at some point the rotor is actually worn out, and it's not to its minimum level, but it's somewhat worn out, the strength of the metal is actually compromised. So this actually happened to my personal vehicle. Is one time I had a Mercedes that I said, okay, it wasn't worn out, it had a little, a few ridges, this and that. So I said, okay, I'm gonna save money and I'm gonna install just the brake pads. Well, guess what happened? In about maybe 1,000 or 2,000 miles after I did that, I warped the rotors. And then I started thinking and realizing what actually is happening. So that is the reason why you should not install, new brake pads on rotors, on used rotors. And the metal actually becomes very weak. When you install these new brake pads, they're actually hard. So what happens is the weak point, the weak metal, or the weak part in this brake system is actually the rotor, because it has been used, it has been stressed, and that stress, actually gets much worse when you install the new brake pads. And the one of the really bad things that happens is warping. So with the warping, is because the rotor overheats, because the new brake pad is so much stronger, and it creates much bigger heat. And that's because of the surface on the brake pad, this beginning surface of the brake pads, that actually, we are taught, and I've read a lot of these things, special instructions even for these brake systems. The best thing to do is to actually, when you install a new brake pad and a new rotor, they kind of actually they start to work better when they're new, because of the two surfaces in the beginning. They have these materials that actually kind of get bonded, and it actually, when they get bonded, the rotor gets additional strength. Well, you can imagine that this will not happen on a used rotor, and being so much softer, that actually compromises the metal, and it warps the metal because of the high heat that the new brake pad creates. And you can imagine, this is a very much a safety issue. You could run into some kind of a much bigger problem. We actually had a situation that was kind of, it looks strange to me, but it was on a Lexus that I would have never thought that I would see that on a Lexus, on a rear brake, that we recommended replacing the rotors with the brake pads, and the owner did not want to change the rotors. He said that they're fine. So we installed new brake pads, and literally maybe within 3 miles out of leaving the shop, the car actually came back and the rotor was broken at this piece. So it was separated from the central piece and this piece, and this is only due to because of this high strength of the new brake pads and the heat that they create. It literally broke the rotor off the metal. So that is the main problem. It's heat, and heat is the biggest enemy of these parts. That's why I would never risk, to a customer or to me, of trying to use rotor on a brake pad. And most of the time, actually, the rotors will be worn out pretty much. Maybe not all the way, but they will be pretty much worn out with a set of brake pads that they were installed from brand new. So there's no point for you to save maybe a little bit of money when you actually are going to end up paying double the money, because when the rotors wear out in maybe 10,000, maybe 5,000 miles after the brake pads, you're gonna have to pay again the same labor, because you're gonna have to change the rotors. Think about it. I mean, this is reality, and this is my experience. So I'm telling you, that is the truth. That's why we don't compromise, and we don't risk, fixing cars in that way to customers, and it just doesn't make any sense. And also, multiple times we've had the biggest problem ever when we install new brake pads. This is years ago, with customers that did not want to take our advice. We installed just the brake pads on used rotors. They will start squeaking immediately. I mean, just immediately, and there's no way to fix this. And then what happens is, not only the customer's paying for the labor for the brake pads, we have to throw away the brake pads that we just installed because they are destroyed because of the ridges, the deformation of the rotors, the used ones. So we have to throw. So first things, you lose the money in the labor. You're gonna have to pay a second time for the labor. then you lose the first brake pads, so you have to buy second set of brake pads, and and that way you actually end up buying the rotors. So again, think about it. This is the logical way of what you're supposed to do, and this is the advice of of my experience. And this is not a joke, because again, would you risk your safety, your compromised, would you compromise actually your car in that way? I don't think so, if you actually have the correct knowledge. The problem with the dealership is they don't explain that, and even a lot of the other shops don't explain that, because they simply don't understand how these things work. So again, this is a BMW, but this is the same system and the same way they work on Mercedes, Audi, and Porsches. You just cannot compromise. This is specific. This video I'm making for this guy. He said he's from Germany, and I see his name is Turkish. I know that there are a lot of Turkish people in Germany, but that's a whole other point. So my friend, he was explaining to me that he always went to some kind of a huge dealership, Mercedes in Stuttgart in Germany, and they never replaced the rotors, this and that. I have no idea why they wouldn't do that. I have no idea what kind of problems he would have and how many times he would go back with his car. But my reality is this thing here, and that's why I will never just risk it. And if a customer does not want to trust us, he wants to do just the brake pads, then he signs a document with us that he will pay for the labor and for the new parts again if there is a problem with the brakes. And of course, maybe a couple weeks later, the guy is always back because he's complaining, and the rotors are warped or the brakes are squeaking. So that's pretty much the whole situation with this. I hope you understand what I just explained to you, and this is not me trying to make you spend extra money on something that you don't need. No, actually you do need, because again, this is the safety of your driving, this is the safety of your car, and it's about the making sure that your car works properly, and create a better longevity for the rest of the parts around this brake system, because remember, the brake systems on these cars are an extremely essential part of the car, because what do you do in a car? Well, you accelerate and then you brake. So yes, that is my experience, that's my advice, that is my opinion, and I hope you guys understand what I just explained to you. Again, thanks very much for watching. I will answer any comments, and I don't want to pick any fights or this and that. Again, my experience, my opinions. It's up to you what you guys want to do. And again, thanks very much. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like my videos and please subscribe. Thank you.